even the projects that you have in mind are impacted by security. And I know that Shehu mentioned the issue of water. It was easily the most eye-catching promise you made during the campaign, which is, we'll provide Enugu with water within 180 days. And people said, no, it's impossible. You can't do it. Now you did. But then, a lot of those infrastructure have been vandalized by some of the criminal elements within that you referred to earlier on in the interview. And I wonder, the nexus between security, which Rochus talked about, economy, Shehu mentioned the fact about state police and so on, and then the battle you are having with control here, essentially with forces that don't report to you, but who are supposed to manage this crisis. I'm wondering how you are dealing with that nexus, because that is something that is impacting directly on your ability, seemingly, to fulfill the promise you have made to the people, and who don't want to hear, oh, well, actually, this is the problem here, and, you know, I'm handicapped and so on. How are you dealing with that?
Again, talking about infrastructure and the challenges we have with vandalism, stealing, and the rest of it. Yet we gave ourselves a time frame of 180 days to be able to deal with the water challenges too, which again is so this is a problem that we've had to endure over the decades. We didn't just say 180 days because we felt that it was a low-hanging fruit that can easily be notched. We did say that because looking at the wish list of our people, we knew where water ranked on that wish list, and we were in a hurry to make sure that it got ticked off from that wish list. So we of course had to again deploy the disruptive innovation despite all the inherent challenges. So with water, what you've noticed is that we've accomplished quite a lot. In fact, for context, let's imagine before we came, and one of my most depressing moments during the campaign was, sight of seeing children carrying buckets and cans in a queue, buying water from tankers. Okay, so we just didn't think that that was acceptable, in society like ours. So we had to move, of course, the production volume. We were talking about a production volume that was just paltry 2 million liters per day. We had to move that from that paltry number of 2 million to 120 million liters. So in terms of water supply, we have more than enough water to supply to the people of Enugu. And however, we're still having to deal with the challenges you just mentioned, where we're trying to make sure it gets to the last mile, making sure that every home turns on their tap and they have water running. And that's where the challenge is, because beyond just dealing with the fact that they vandalize these pipes as you're installing them and they steal them, you're also dealing with replacing old asbestos pipe that are now, they are brittle and corroded, so they cannot stand the water pressure. So we've now had to, tear open the ground to replace those old asbestos pipe, and also make sure that even where we have buildings affecting the reticulation line, we're not dealing with that, we're redirecting them. Because the option we have is to say we'll start pulling down houses. But again, our job is to make life easy for our people. So where we can avoid doing so, we, by all means, will redirect the pipe and make sure. So, and that's what we're dealing with now. And we're, of course, hoping that we're going to continue to work with the security agencies to ensure that they protect these public utilities and these public assets.
All right. Let's exit security now. Rotus has one question on security.
Just a follow-up. I guess your feedback channels with the people. I guess what are you hearing? Because it's the people of Enugu that will tell your story. Just really quickly, Rise News were in Kigali 9 days ago for the Africa CEO Forum, and you can walk around there 2-3 a.m. in the morning and feel safe. And the indigents, I vacationed there in late 2022 before even going there for work, and so the indigents will tell you that Kigali is a safe city. You've got police stations. What kind of feedback are you getting over the past year from the people on the changes that you've made to security and so on?
Oh no, so don't forget where we're coming from, and I'm sure you must have also, you must have heard this across different channels. We were dealing with a situation where our police stations were constantly attacked. It was almost on a weekly basis. Our checkpoints were attacked, our policemen were killed, our armed forces were killed, and their arms carted away. So that was where we're coming from. And, so it's very easy for us to forget, and of course I don't begrudge anyone who may not be able to remember where we're actually coming from as a people. The truth is that we've made tremendous progress in the area of security. We believe that whatever minor breaches we have, we're able to contain them and we address. And so the feedback has been great, not particularly from the people of the state, because again, one of the things we did very earlier on, few hours after my swearing in, you recall that I immediately came and signed an executive order 1, which is the Citizens Charter. That Citizen Charter mandates me to engage the citizens of the state, to give my scorecard every 3 months. So we have a town hall meeting where we basically tell the people of the state what we have done, how much more of their money we've received, what we have used the money for, and all that. So the feedback has been great.
All right, let's exit. Interestingly, Ladi drove you through security to water route. But water is very interesting. I mean, it's perhaps not a conversation that you will have in governance in Nigeria because it never gets that kind of attention. A lot of, if you look at the deficit that Nigeria, most states of the Confederation, people have in water is very, very abysmal. And when we wonder what government is doing, for 2 decades, the people of Enugu State they've suffered over the issue of water. But I'll allow Natalie to hit us with questions on the issue of water.
All right, so I'd like to take it up from where you left. The question I've always had at the back of my mind is, why was it so difficult for previous administrations to actually secure water in Enugu State? You were able to at least secure the generation and certain level of distribution in 180 days. What was so difficult to achieve, Your Excellency? You can clear us on that.
Well, I guess the key thing, what we did was, first of all, we had to dimension the problems. We had to have also, so if you were to craft a strategy, you need to be able to do some trend analysis. You have to have baseline data and understand the way things have evolved over the years. And so we did all that. So it was clear to us where the pressure points were, where what we needed to address. We looked at the upstream, the midstream, and of course the downstream. So we identified all that. So when we committed to 180 days time frame, we also knew what the long lead items were. We knew those things that if we didn't begin to front load, it was going to impact that time frame. So we set immediately forth at dawn. We had to start pre-ordering. We had to start, so we it's a fast track model. So it's almost like if you're going to think about innovation, you could think about innovation as doing something routinely, but just becoming better at it, growing marginally. Or you could think of innovation as doing something radical or disruptively. Okay, so just changing things from the way they had been done before. And that was the model we adopted. We felt that we couldn't do an incremental model. So if we were going to do an incremental model, it would be growing from 2 million liters to maybe 5 million. We needed the total daily consumption for Enugu Metropolis was 80 million liters daily. So we needed to at least grow to that point and even build buffer, which was what we did. So it was basically, as I said, dimensioning the problem, thinking through it, knowing how to fast track, and also, most importantly, assembling the right team, making sure you have the right people who would execute. Because with the best idea, with the clarity of thoughts and with the right direction, if you don't have the team that will lead that process, you're still going to be stuck. So.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe a follow-up.
Yes.
One of the problems that you have mentioned, you said about 200 houses have been built on water lines in Enugu State, and you feared the issue of demolition. Well, how are you going to resolve that? If buildings are presently on the waterways, on the water lines, how do you resolve that? Or what are your plans in resolving that?
So, except it's absolutely necessary that we couldn't rechannel or redirect the channel, then we have to basically bring that building down. But so far what we have done is costing us more, and in some cases we've had to ask those who violated the building rules and codes to, absorb that cost, so that, of course, because the alternative would be to pull down, those houses, which is something we would be very reluctant to do. So we have continued to redirect and to ensure that the water gets to the last mile. So we're doing aggressive reticulation as we talk now. The idea is to deal with the tertiary parts, because we've got water up to the secondary line. We've dealt with the primary line, which is from the production point to the reservoir. We've also dealt with the secondary line from the reservoir to the headers. Okay, now dealing with the tertiary line from the headers to the households, different households, it's where we're now, having challenges, because again, as I said, having to deal with all these obstructions. But we're determined, and we're not unwavering at all.
Yeah. So I like how you've spoken about water almost like electricity or oil and gas. When you talk about generation, the last mile, and you just talk about the tertiary lines to homes. And I know we'll get to electricity down the line, Enugu being the first state that has been given regulatory oversight over power, Ekiti and others followed, but you were first. It costs money to treat water. It costs money to distribute it. We've been showing, there are videos showing of you touring sites and the amount of infrastructure. What about the billing of water? I want to get your thoughts on, if you think about your normal utility bills that a household gets, power, electricity, water is one of them, right? Yeah. Is the state, are you going to shoulder that financial burden? Are you going to track how much water is being used, and what's your vision for how it's going to be billed? Because, as I said, it has to be treated. It's got, there's a cost there. And you just talked about so how down the line? How do you see that working out?
Well, that's a great question. The truth is that we're going to ensure that we continue to produce water, and we continue to produce more than enough that our people require. But I agree with you 100%. Water is a bankable sector. It's not something you shouldn't be able to sustain, right? And that's essentially our plan in the downstream. We expect to outsource that. We expect to bring in private sector to manage that. But again, because we know if we had to leave the burden of production on the private sector, the cost may be prohibitive. So which was why we intervened in the production side of things and of course in the midstream. We know that once we've stabilized this tertiary line distribution and we've gotten significant part of our city covered, we will bring in, because we don't want them, because of their investment outlay, to impose unbearable bills on our people. So we would eventually outsource the downstream, and to make it sustainable for us, that's the way to go. So the management of the downstream will be
quickly,
outsourced.
just my fear when Rotus was asking the question is that the people at the bottom of the ladder usually get the brunt. Rural water supply. I mean, the people in the city, in most part of the city, the metropolises, they will get by somehow. But what incentive are you giving to the rural people to get access? They've suffered almost 50 years of this perennial water problem in Enugu State. Quickly, so that we can take Natalie before we go on break.
In fact, for the rural, we have modular systems. We are not actually addressing the rural water system the way we've addressed the urban water system. What we're doing, which is under our, we have an agency that is responsible for rural water supply and sanitation. So we are essentially building modular water supply system for the rural community, one that is sustainable, and as you said, that doesn't impose a huge cost on them. So is not going to apply to most rural areas.
Natalie, you signed us to break with your question.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So in the area of acceptance is a major challenge that sometimes is overlooked. Before we stop talking about security, I was going to talk about the acceptance of the modern cattle ranches. We've seen people protest, so many people express some kind of displeasure because they are, for lack of better words, frightened by some of these Fulani herders. So when it comes to the water infrastructure, what is the government doing to let the people of Enugu know that they have to accept this water infrastructure as theirs, that they have to also be on the lookout for people who may be trying to vandalize some of this water infrastructure? And also, has the government made any progress in finding out who exactly is behind some of this vandalism that we're seeing? An area of acceptance, what measures are being taken?
So the people are not really interested in telling them about their problems, okay, or what has been responsible for their living conditions over the years. It is your responsibility, and I see that as my responsibility as someone who has been elected to serve the people, to communicate. So we have a responsibility. Even if they haven't accepted, it means we haven't communicated well. So we still need we have some work to do on our part to continue to engage. It's just like the ranch, management thing you've talked about. We also recognize that we still need more communication. We need to get the buy-in of the people. After all, democracy is a collective work. You can't go it alone. You have to carry the people along. And that's what we're doing. We're going to continue to do that to a point where people take ownership, understand how going to vandalize or burst or break the pipes affects you and indeed affect some other person. Again, we also believe that there are some entrenched interests. We've tried to explain to them, we've held several series of meetings with them. The entrenched interests, those that have benefited from the status quo. It's our job to ensure that we get them to understand that you could still deploy your assets into other business models. It's just rejigging your business model. If you were using your tanker to provide water to homes, there is also, Enugu is a beehive of construction. So you can as well begin to use the same tanker to provide water for construction companies. So there are 101 other things. You can reconstruct it to go to the farmland, and so that it's just trying to get their buy-in, and we're working on all
that's a